Inoue Sensei is a legend, and I think his legend will grow in time. I think that people will write about him, people will make films about him, and I think the people that trained under him, that experienced his charisma, his whole being, will constantly refer back to him.
In terms of one of the all-time great karate men ever, he has to be up there. If not the greatest, I don't know, but he certainly has to be up there, you know, as simple as that.
He was such a massive character that he seemed to instill everybody with an enthusiasm and a desire to work at their best. So I couldn't conceive of anyone slacking in his class. So for someone to have to be nurtured, it wasn't really necessary, just his very presence, which I think you'll probably find most people say about Inoue Sensei, was the presence. I mean, were he to walk in behind me, you'd feel him coming in, and being in the dojo, just emanating this wonderful exuberant style of teaching and living, really, made everyone work extremely hard.
Kinosuke Inoue, chief instructor to the KUGB and head of JKA Europe, died on March the 29th, 2003, at the age of 67, after a battle with stomach cancer. Resident in the UK since 1966, Inoue Sensei. Kinosuke Inoue was probably one of the most famous Shotokan sensei in the world. Although he based himself in England, he taught in almost every country in the world and always left a deep, lasting impression wherever he went. Everyone has heard of Inoue, the tiger of Shotokan karate.
I first met him when he stepped into my dojo shortly after arriving in England, and one foot in the door, it was instant respect, instant. You thought, just look at him, and you thought, shit. And within 2 days he decimated my club. Totally.
Scary. Very, very scary man. I'd seen Japanese before. Crystal Palace, I'd seen demonstrations, competitions and things like this. But I'd never been up close to somebody like Inoue. And the nearest I can give you is like if you suddenly put up close to a big, big, powerful animal.
Inoue, you only had to see him, and there was just something about him that stood out from everybody else. It's like when you walk in a room and somebody catches your attention, and he was like that wherever you went. You just had this magnetism about it.
There was an atmosphere in the dojo when you walked in because he was there. And you could see people looking at him like their heads, but nobody catches his eye, look away quickly. So when you're training, you're always like slightly hyped up and you're waiting, and the tone of his voice would come bellowing through, and it would definitely lift you up, you'd fire up, you'd go, ooh, you're tired, you'd try and get that one more out because you didn't want to be the one who was seen to be the weakest.
To me, it'll always last. I would think the most people he was associated with, it would always last. I mean, the Liverpool people knew him better than anybody because they had him for months. They had him first. They hired him, didn't they? I don't know how they could afford that, but they did. They trained with him even through the day in the parks and that. Sure, I mean, Andy Sherry was his first black belt, and they must have memories of Inoue, you know, from way back. But I'll never forget him. Never. Nice man.
You felt that way, that he had something special, that he had something that you wanted. You was frightened of it. It's like a lot of things. You're frightened of the situation, but you think, I must put my foot in the water to see whether it is too hot.
Maybe I was in my late 20s. I was very impressed. I'd never seen karate like this. They were big, they were dynamic, they were fast, they were agile, they were powerful. They were everything we thought karate is and should be. And it was incredible to see it. A few years later, I read about his visit to California and his training at Nishiyama's dojo. And then I heard that he was coming to New York, or the East Coast. And he was living in Philadelphia, and him and Kisaka Sensei came from Japan for about 2 years. And during that 2-year period, once a month, he would come to New York and teach for a weekend. So Sometimes it was at my dojo, which was at the time I was training with Maynard Miner, and sometimes at Maury's dojo.
He eventually moved to London and established the world-famous Marshall Street Dojo in the Soho district of London's West End. He was also appointed the chief instructor to the KUGB, a position he held until his death. In an interview for Shotokan magazine, Onoida Sensei said, "In those early days, karate in England was very small, and the KUGB consisted of only a few clubs, mainly in London, Liverpool, and a couple of major cities. I believe that the foundation of the KUGB comes from the influence of senior instructors from Liverpool. I remember Terry O'Neill was only a young kid at the time. But I particularly remember Andy Sherry, who was so keen he never missed training when I was living in Liverpool. In fact, he was so keen that early mornings he would knock on my door and ask for some extra special training. When I started in Liverpool, I decided that they should train exactly as we had done in Japan, so that this would give them a good karate foundation." Although many people trained under Onoida Sensei, only few knew him on a personal level. To get an idea of what Onoida Sensei was really like and how he lived his life, we spoke to Craig Ray, someone who was genuinely close to him, both inside and outside the dojo.
I watched all the Japanese greet him, and how they greeted him and how low they bowed was although we all knew how good he was, knew he was, the way I saw them treat him. One of the nicest things, right, was about 2 years ago, and it really touched me, right, we sent a golf car, and he goes, "Craig," he goes, "it's really nice playing golf with my friend." And it really meant a lot to me. But at the same time, as well as I knew him, I never forgot my place. If he's with the Japanese or if he's with Andy Shearer or people like that, I would keep my distance. I'd never just go and walk up. And he'd always let me know that he was the governor. He'd always let me know my place. But of course, you know, in certain circumstances, I went to his golf club and we're sitting there and we're just talking almost like friends. We were like friends. But I never forgot my place, do you know what I mean? Because I'm still a karate student. And he's who he is and who he was, and but he could also be the nicest person, like we said, but he never let you forget he was also the boss. He was the boss, you know. So.
The squad members of the KUGB are best placed to explain what a massive impact and influence this man had on karate. For all of them, Onoida Sensei was the leading light, the inspiration, the driving force. The boss.
His ability to communicate enthusiasm, his ability to inspire the absolute best from you was, I think that's what, for me personally, that was what his unique ability was. Beyond his karate ability, obviously, you know, world renowned, the whole 9 yards, fantastic, without a doubt. But for me, the key was that ability. On the line, the international match, Sensei Onoida come up to you, you know, it might be the finals of the World Championships, it might be the finals of the European Championships, it might be the National Championships. And if Sensei Onoida, he would give you that extra 1%, and that extra 1% is what's needed to win, most of the time, in any conflict, I suppose. And he you know, wouldn't often understand what Sensei said. He don't want to come at it, but he would just, you know, he'd tap you on the back and just, wow, you know, he'd just give you this thing. And you knew that, you knew what it meant.
Well, I think Onoida Sensei is a legend, and I think his legend will grow in time. I think that people will write about him, people will make films about him, and I think the people that trained under him, that experienced his charisma, his whole being, will constantly refer back to him.
In terms of one of the all-time great karate men ever, he has to be up there. If not the greatest, I don't know, but he certainly has to be up there, you know, as simple as that.
He was such a massive character that he seemed to instill everybody with an enthusiasm and a desire to work at their best. So I couldn't conceive of anyone slacking in his class. So for someone to have to be nurtured, it wasn't really necessary, just his very presence, which I think you'll probably find most people say about Onoida Sensei, was the presence. I mean, were he to walk in behind me, you'd feel him coming in, and being in the dojo, just emanating this, wonderful, exuberant style of teaching and living, really, made everyone work extremely hard.
Kinosuke Onoida, chief instructor to the KUGB and head of JKA Europe, died on March the 29th, 2003, at the age of 67, after a battle with stomach cancer. Resident in the UK since 1966, Onoida Sensei was quite simply an inspiration for thousands of Shotokan karateka worldwide.
When the news broke, I looked at a photograph of him and I said, no, couldn't happen. He's just too much, too big, too powerful, too bigger than life, actually, larger than life. And it was so hard, it was very hard to take in. They said it, you heard it, but it was difficult to take in.
As far as I'm concerned, he was a tiger. I had the highest respect for him even when I departed his company, 1991. But you can't take anything away from him. He will be missed.
Those who knew him well will understand that Mr. Onoida's bold karate style and stern face belied his inner kindness and gentle nature. His death is a great loss, not only for Shotokan but for world karate. Mr. Onoida's dedication and commitment will be greatly missed, but his spirit will live on in karate forever. Nishiyama. It is fitting that the last words should be those of Onoida Sensei himself. The soul of Karate-do is peace and concern for all mankind. It is my wish that people who practice Karate-do should always keep these things in mind: a modest heart, gentle attitude, and peace for mankind. The spirit of Karate Nisenten Nashi is thus fulfilled.